I'm putting it out on the record that I'm like, in my perspective, by Easter 2026, the market has completely shifted.
We are still in a huge supply crunch. The supply crunch hasn't gotten any better. If anything, it's probably arguably gotten worse.
I am joined by Lachlan Vidler, who heads up PIPA. Lachlan, welcome on, mate. How you doing?
Aaron, thanks for having me, mate.
You can see nearly every pocket that clients are going to buy in is an auction market. Auction markets predominantly show that it's a seller's market.
And now we've got this new policy where people who couldn't afford can now afford in the eyes of the bank. So demand is even higher. So where can it go? You know, basic economics.
People think the horse is bolted beforehand. Just wait and watch. You can't put this back in the cage, mate, afterwards. G'day, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. If you have been following my journey, you know that I am what they call a QPIA, Qualified Property Investment Advisor. Now, I typically stay in my lane. I do all things finance when it comes to me being a mortgage broker. But what that does is it just gives me the ability to talk the talk of what it means when I'm speaking to buyers agents, when we're talking about property investment advice as well. I think it's one of the pinnacle qualifications that come in the property advisory space. And to me, it's very much like having industry affiliations with other Mortgage and Finance Association of Australia. This is kind of that seal of approval that someone has done their qualifications, has been put through the ringer. And as part of that body, which is called PIPA, I am joined by Lachlan Vidler, who heads up PIPA. We've had the pleasure of meeting each other quite a few times as well through industry. He is a BA, owns his own advisory business, Atlas Property Group. Lachlan, welcome on, mate. How you doing?
Aaron, thanks for having me, mate. I'm going well. It's life is busy as it always is. I don't think it really gets any quieter as each year goes by. But mate, loving life. Lots happening, that's for sure.
Good, mate. Good. I mean, we were just chatting before. You say you got plenty going on. You've just added more stuff onto your plate, which is jumping onto a Channel 9 show, as you casually do. And mate, very curious to go, what's that about, and what can people expect when they watch these?
Yeah. Oh well, look, it's an amazing show. It truly is. It's so the show's called Budget Battlers. They did season 1 last year. It did really, really well in that sort of prime time, middle of the week time slot. So. Right in the middle of the Channel 9 programming calendar. And basically the premise of the show is, there's a lot of Aussie battlers out there, right? People who do such good work in the community, people who never ask for anything themselves. And there's a lot of these people that, by the very nature of them being the people they are, they've taken care of everyone else, and they've let their own homes suffer, and they can be very old, they can be a bit dilapidated, they could be flood affected. There's lots of different things going on, but the crux of it being their home is probably not feeling like much of a home at the moment. So we go in 5 days, and it really is 5 days. There's no TV magic about that. 5 days with a 10 grand budget, and then also trying to bring in as many people from the community as possible to reno the home as much as we possibly can. And then I've joined them this season as their investment expert, so that I can help them to not only give advice around what's going to make it a home feel like a home, but also what could be really high impact activities they can do to the home to also increase the value. So not only are they going to have a nice place to live in, but also a financial asset that's growing.
Yeah, man, it's incredible. How do you get involved in something like that?
They just reached out. They reached out and obviously had seen some of the stuff that we were doing, and we had quite a few conversations around how it could look, and we worked out that it was probably going to be a really good fit, and then from there it's just been a lot of hard work, steel cap boots and on the work side and jumping in, and wouldn't trade it for the world. It's been awesome.
No, fantastic. No business like show business, mate. Good on you.
It's I'll tell you what, one thing, not that I've been involved in any other TV shows, but there is no TV magic with this, right? Like what you see is we are on site for 5 days, from the early morning to the late at night. And there's I'm sure there'll probably be like camcorder footage as well of us at midnight or whatever, doing painting and stuff like that. There is no TV magic. It's literally 5 days, like start a Monday, finish a Friday type thing. Like but you know what? Honestly, it's obviously going to be, it's great for my profile. I'm not afraid to say that, right? It's obviously fantastic for that. But when you see the look on some of these people's faces, and some of them have just the most incredible stories of their own difficulties and challenges, and you see their face. And I don't think there's been a single person who hasn't just burst into tears when they've seen what we've done for them. It's also extremely fulfilling stuff, which I think is also just an amazing other side to the journey.
Mate, awesome. I love it. Look, mate, PIPA, people may know we had Nicola McDougall join us a while ago when, Nicola was putting up PIPA. Just in a nutshell, can you let people know, what PIPA stand for and what's your primary role as well?
Yeah. So as you mentioned about yourself, you're a member of PIPA and you're a QPIA, so a Qualified Property Investment Advisor. But PIPA as a whole, Property Investment Professionals of Australia, we're the peak industry body for anyone that works in the property investment space in Australia. So naturally, I'm sure everyone's first thoughts would go to buyer's agency, but it's obviously not just that. You're a mortgage broker yourself. We have accountants, we have financial advisors, we have quantity surveyors, we have lawyers, we have a whole group of people, property managers, real estate agents, all of them. And the idea is that with us as the peak body out there, working with government to try to lobby as appropriate, like we were very involved in the Queensland land tax issues a few years back, very much put in work around negative gearing this year. There's obviously lots of other work that's gone on state-based and federal-based. We do a lot of work with that, but then we're also there providing education like the QPIA program, running events with industry leaders to, educate and grow the standards, and also provide a place that other people that work in the industry can collaborate and find other professionals that they know look at ethics in the same way that they do, that look at competence in the same way that they do, and create a great professional collegiate environment.
Nicely said, mate. Thanks very much. And anyone listening, if you're in a professional environment, you'd know the value of your peak industry body, what they bring to the table, the amount that goes in behind the scenes, CPD hours, networking, education, lobbying, for example. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes that people don't see. And I see it with even in our mortgage broking space where people are like, what's the industry? What are they doing for me? I was like, mate, don't ask what your industry can do for you. Ask what you can do for your industry, right? And I think that's, you've got to be stalwarts when you're part of that industry. You've got to maintain the standards. You've got to endorse the values as well. And I truly believe that, PIPA, to me, even though I feel like it's fairly new in its infancy, it's kicking some major, major goals in terms of keeping the bar as high as possible, even though it's quite an unregulated industry into property advisory. I think you guys run a very, very tight ship, and that's not me blowing any smoke, mate. But one of the things that you guys typically do very, very well is research and insights into what, effectively a bit of a litmus test. I'm trying to think of the magazine. What's the one out of WA? They do their sentiment. I've had them on as well. So maybe
is it
Australian Property Investor Mag?
Yeah, API Mag.
API. They'll do something fairly similar, which is a bit of a sentiment study as well. But you guys did one recently, and I thought that's what I'm going to unpack today with you guys listening in, which is this is what your peers in investing are saying. Yeah. So Lachlan, you bring up your research there. I've done all my my notes here.
I got it here ready to go for you.
These are the top things you need to know. First of all, give us some background. How many people were interviewed, or what's the baseline numbers like? And in terms of timings, when was this study done?
Yeah, so great questions. And I think also really important questions to understand that this isn't just, 20 blokes in a room who are trying to make it sound like, oh, we know what's going on. So this survey, we try to get it out as far and wide as we can in the industry. So we put it out to professionals then put it out to their own databases. I mean, now, I think in the current environment, it's important to recognize that places like Facebook and social media in general, they form huge collections of communities that are the people who are living this day to day, whether they are the investors themselves or professionals or tenants or somebody else that might fit into that sort of pool. So we pull in respondents from all across as many places that we can to try to get a true diversity of opinion so that we can actually get a reflective response of society and not just, like 50 buyers agents who are all probably going to say that property is the best thing to be buying at all times and in all places, right? So this year we had almost 900 respondents. It was a little bit under, but very close to 900 respondents, which is obviously a very, very significant amount of people. I mean, if you were to go and put 900 people in a room or, close to 900 people in a room, you'd see a room that's packed out pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
And like I said, they come from all manner of walks of life and all manner of professions, all manner of levels of investing, and then they obviously respond to the survey, and the survey has, off the top of my head, it's about 70 to 80 questions, and some of them are obviously reliant on you answering other ones. So if you say no to one, you might not get a subsequent one that was related to that. But if you were to answer, I guess, in a way that involves you in all questions, it's around 70 to 80 questions. So it's very, very in-depth. And the reason that we do that is this investment sentiment survey, or the investor sentiment survey, has been going for a number of years. And we use this data when we do things like lobbying to government, so that when, for example, certain politicians from whatever party it may be might want to bring in a change, we can go with real data from real people on the ground who have a perspective and give this to them to say, you're either on the right path, or maybe you need to look at some other opinions, because you might be about to make decisions that aren't in the best interest of the community. So that's just one use of it. And we obviously use it across media. We use it for raising the profile of the profession or professions associated with us. And also we utilize it to make sure that people don't always think that investors are the demons that often we can be portrayed to be.
Nicely said. Thanks very much. Now I'm going to jump into some of these stats, and I've got a whole heap here. The one is 16.7% of investors sold at least one property in the last year. So when was this? What time stamp are we talking about on this research?
So the survey was completed about a month ago. So, we're talking about over the last, effectively as of, I'm not sure when you're going to release this podcast, but realistically around 12 months from around now. So, very recent. And I think if I can add on to that, something that I think is really interesting is that I obviously have the data at hand of also some previous responses to this answer. Yeah. Last year it was 14.1. So we're up 2.6% in a year. Before that, we were at 12.1 in 2023. And then in 2022, when we first asked this question, in 2022, we asked it over the last 2 years. So it encompassed data from 21 and 22. And back then, over 2 years, it was 16.7%. So you can see that we've had a very steady increase over the last few years, that, there are probably a lot of answers or reasons that why we've come to this position. But I think that when we dive into some of the other data that I'm sure you're going to want to, there's some very, very strong, consistent responses about why people have been looking at selling.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the first thing that a lot of people will probably they'll jump straight to is, this must be people that are struggling. Like, these must be investors that are holding on for dear life. But when you actually look into it, a third of them held properties for 10 to 20 years. Yeah. And then the next one was like 3 to 7 years, for example, 7 to 10 years. So these aren't people that have just gone in and gone, geez, mate, I can't hold on. And I've just bought this property in the last few years. These are people that have probably made their money and now exiting the market purely based on timing, right?
Yeah, I think that's obviously a portion of that. But really interestingly, we asked 2 questions that were around this, right? So one was around the reasons that you did actually sell, right? And that's obviously relevant into that stat. But we then also asked a question around future selling intentions and around the top reasons why you might be looking to sell in the not too distant future. And it was interesting. I don't know if you want me to go into it now, but it was interesting to see the answers today versus the answers of why you might be selling in the future or the near future. And there's some similarities, but also a few differences as well.
Let's go into it, because
you want to go into it?
I'll get a bloody bee in my bonnet when the answers come out. You go for it.
Okay, all right. So the top reasons that people did actually sell over this last 12-month period, the number one reason was reduction of debt exposure, right? Which I think makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Right. And I think that's a reason that will always exist, right? Whether rates are up, rates are down, times are great, times are bad. At the end of the day, especially as people who have held property for a long time are coming towards their retirement, naturally you're going to want to reduce your debt exposure, right? It makes a lot of sense. But that answer was 41.7%. The next top reason was rising holding and compliance costs. And that was at 40.4%. So we're talking about, what's that? 1.3% difference between reason 1 and reason 2. And reason 2 was all around the holding compliance cost increases, which I think is very telling for a lot of the changes we've been seeing and a lot of the intervention that we've been seeing, especially from governments over the last few years. And when we get to the future selling intentions, it paints a very interesting story as well.
Yeah, mate, great. And regular listeners will hear me talk about investing is a game of grip strength. You've got to be able to hold on.
Yeah.
Good and bad times, negative cash flow becomes crucial. So increased holding costs and compliance costs. Now, that's got nothing to do with maintenance, for example. It's probably rate rises that have gone up. I mean, when they say compliance costs, maybe it's SMSF, maybe it's accounting, whatever it is that sits in there, for example. But generally what it is, land tax, it's unforeseen costs that usually come up that sideswipe an investor. So negative cash flow compounded with, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
That's generally where investors probably get their nose out of joint and going, right, that's it, I'm out.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're cashing their chips in way too early. And it always says a lot that there's not enough of a war chest, or there's not enough provisions kept for these ongoing or out-of-pocket expenses as well.
Well, interestingly, the third reason, which kind of breaks out of that holding compliance, but I would personally always keep it related, but for the purposes of the survey, we did separate it out, is the third biggest reason was increased land tax / government charges. And that was at just under 33%, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's very telling. It's very, very telling that, reason one, reduction of debt, makes sense, right? To me, it makes a lot of sense, right? But reason two and reason three being around your compliance, your government costs, your holding costs, and the increase of them, I think that you're definitely right. It is a game of grip strength, but I think that there's also an argument to be made for the conversation around where are all these expenses coming from and why are these expenses coming, especially on the government intervention side, and what benefit are investors, tenants, and society as a whole getting from it, not just what we're being told we're going to get from it, but that's actually being realized out of it.
Yeah, nicely said, Lachlan. Look, if you're listening, this is one of these conversations that might feel a little bit hard because it's very stat heavy. Yeah, I get it. I'm going to feel you. But what we're talking about is sentiment. And so sentiment doesn't have to rely on statistics, sentiment, or having access. And you will have access to this entire report. I'll put the notes and the link to it in the show notes. Sorry. But what I'm really trying to get at is you're going to see some common themes start to come through. We've been very, very clear around if you're investing for tax purposes and tax then becomes the reason to get in or get out, that game's going to find you out pretty quickly. And you're going to invest in somewhere like Victoria, go in eyes wide open around tax, the land tax thresholds, for example. You're going to be buying through a trust, understand land tax thresholds. You're going to be buying certain states or different entities. You've got to be asking the question of, particularly your accountant, what am I going to be up for with tax? So you're going eyes wide open. Knowledge is power. This is a funny one, Lachlan. I say funny, not funny, but it's 53% would stop investing if negative gearing changes were implemented. That's half investors would stop investing.
Yeah.
I'd almost say, mate, thank you very much. Probably step out of the market and let other good investors step in.
Yeah.
That blows my mind.
What I mean, I've got my own perspective on it, but and I think that we'll be really aligned. But like, what is it? What is it surprises you so much about that stuff?
Half of investors, because everyone's trying to chase positive cash flow.
Yeah.
Right. So you're here trying to get negative gearing, but everyone's trying to chase positive cash flow.
Yeah.
And when you're positive cash flow, you're now paying more tax because it goes into your taxable income.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hang on, you're trying to reduce your tax by being negatively geared. When you're trying to get positive cash flow out of your property, you're going to pay income tax.
Yeah.
What's the math ain't mathing for me.
And you know what? And I'm glad that this is your thought. And I think taking my PIPA hat off for a second and putting on, my Atlas, industry professional hat on for a second, I think it's because of the real lack of education, understanding that people have around things like tax and things like investment outcomes. Because I'm sure you're the same. I sit in conversations every day where you ask people, what is it that you're looking for, right? You want to build a portfolio, you want to buy properties, what do you want? And I go, well, I really want positive cash flow. I want to build a passive income. I go, okay, that's fair enough. That makes sense. You want retirement. But then the next breath, they'll say, but I also pay so much tax right now. I want to negatively gear it. And it is in complete contradiction to each other, but it's that lack of understanding that I think breeds responses like that.
So if you're trying to understand what we're saying here is, I want a extremely fast vehicle, like a V8, but I want it to be fuel efficient.
It doesn't work.
I want to play league or union, but I don't want to play contact sport. And it's like, mate, you can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
You can't invest in property and not have some type of tax implication that's going to come up. And if you're investing for negative gearing, that would be like me running my business in a loss to try and get some type of tax break. It never has made sense. And if you can understand the silliness in it, then you're probably a good investor. We're here to make money. And when you make money, you pay more tax. It's a core to success fee in my books. So yeah, when you break through thresholds, when you're earning 60K, that's cool. But when you're earning 200K and you're paying more tax, you don't feel it because you're making more money. And the same thing would apply when you're building a portfolio. When you build a portfolio, you're going to make more money. Therefore, you're going to pay more tax, whether that's land tax, CGT when you go to sell an asset, for example, income tax when you're positively geared as well. This is all par for the journey. Yeah.
And I think that's really what it comes down to, which is that, for PIPA as a whole, we're dealing more on the professional side, right? Like we're not here to act as consumer advocates, right? We want to protect consumers by ensuring that the industry does the right thing by them, but our core mandate isn't around the consumer advocacy side, right? But this is where I think it's so important that professionals have such a key role in ensuring, firstly, that they are informed themselves, because bad advice, breeds bad advice, but that you're not just here as an industry professional to make money, right? You're also here to make society better. And that involves things like education. So when you sign your client on for whatever it is that you do, and you're having that conversation and they clearly don't understand something basic, like you can't have a V8 that's fuel efficient, that you actually explain that to them, because then it's going to make your life easier as a professional, because now they're more informed. But more to the point, it's also just better for them to actually be educated and understand that. And I think that sometimes we forget that our job is also to educate, not just to make money or to run a successful business.
Oh, nicely said. Let's jump into, a lot of people listening love to go location. I've never been a location guy, but I'll push that button and see where it takes us. But top buying locations, so top future hotspots or top buying locations, it's an interesting one, because you've got top buying locations being Melbourne and regional Vic, but future hotspots being Brisbane. So can we just decipher between the two and go Fugazi, Fugazi, what's the difference between the two words here? Top buying location versus a future sales hotspot.
Yeah, well, I think the top buying locations is about where it is right now. But then obviously talking about the future is more around, if we're looking forward, into the future, where do we think that ends up playing? And in terms of the top current with Melbourne, I don't think that would probably shock anybody. But from a stat point of view, last year Melbourne was at 26.3% thought it was the best, top location to go and invest in, and this year it's up to 41%. Which doesn't really shock me, to be honest with you, but still huge, especially considering I think we could all agree that Victoria as a whole doesn't present the most friendly of locations for property investors, with some of the changes that have gone on over the last few years.
Yeah. And the change has been predominantly the land tax,
and tenancy reform as well.
Yeah, big time. Look, I think tenancy reform, most people have rented at some point in their lives. And I think for the poor renter these days, you could serve the notice, and it's like, your rent's going up by $50 a week or something ridiculous, and they've got no choice but to move sometimes because they can't afford it. But I think there's some protection there. Now, if your property's under market for rent, then that's fair play. But there's some investors that I'm like, you just got to be fair, mate. Don't take the proverbial. You got to do the right thing by your tenant, and you don't want to have those changeover costs, you've got the property management, you might have a week of downtime. Is it really worth jacking up the rent and having a week of downtime and then weeks of property management? A new tenant comes in, generally they want things up fixed, so you're going to be up for some repairs and maintenance, whereas the current tenant might be willing to put up with a few things as well. So just being open and having these conversations. And I think the other part that really then we talk about having conversations, and to your point before around where are you getting your advice from, professional advice, 43% sought advice from mortgage brokers. I think this really holds a spotlight up to brokers. I really do, because it's pretty much the highest out of QPIA, accountants or buyer's agent. Number one is going to broker.
Yeah.
And I mean, you probably see it. There's varying degrees of quality in broker land as well, mate. So when someone's going to their broker and they're being told, no, you can't buy, or the broker's now giving tax advice, you've really got to question, what's the role of an actual strategic mortgage broker that's going to help an investor grow their portfolio? That to me is the litmus test. And I think respondents are saying, I actually think brokers have the best seat in the house. I mean, I've said that time and time again. A buyer's agent like yourself, with all due respect, you'll see your view of the world and you have this, whereas I get to see everyone that's buying across the country. You deal primarily, investors, I deal primarily owner and investors. So we get to see first-time buyers, upgraders, downsizers, cashing out, scaling up. We get to see all self-employed, because mate, you could tomorrow, Lachlan, go and drop 5 banging hotspots or properties to a client, but if they can't buy them, then it's kind of worthless, right? The finance is the absolute lock and key here.
Yeah, well, I think to what you were saying, brokers have definitely one of the best seats in the house, and I think unfortunately it's when you look at the buyer's agency side, it's very challenging in some respects, because for a client to really take your advice, they've got to sign up with you, right? And for a lot of people, that's then they're paying some sort of fee, right? And it's usually in the thousands of dollars before you even get into that conversation. I think that when you then look at the broking space, the really difficult thing for people who maybe aren't at the level of knowledge and expertise that they need to be, considering the seat that they hold, is that as you and every other broker listening would know, you don't typically get paid unless you charge fee for service. You don't get paid until the very end of the journey. Yes. So, in some cases, some brokers are obviously not any better than old mate at the barbecue telling you his thoughts on what's going on. Yeah. And I think that, like you were saying, by having that seat in the house, there's a real responsibility that I think that some people could take a little bit more seriously and could upskill themselves, educate. Like, for example, obviously there's PIPA's QPIA program, but even into something else, doing a Cert 4 in real estate, just to try to actually understand something a little bit differently. But I think it really goes to the core of advice versus unsolicited advice versus, uneducated advice or unqualified advice. And that I think it's so important that as a consumer, you need to think about where you are getting that advice from and the qualifications and experience of that person. And as a service provider, thinking about whether or not you are the best person to say what it is that you might want to say. Because if you don't maybe have everything to back up what you're saying, as we can see from these results about where people are getting their advice from, you may inadvertently actually influence somebody to do something that might not be in their best interests.
Yeah, mate. Nicely said. Mate, one of the big thoughts when I was reading the survey, I dare say this survey might have been completed before Albanese put out the changes to the first time owner grants, bringing that forward to October.
Yes, off the top of my head, thinking about the closure date, I reckon there might have been a 1 or 2 week difference.
Yeah, because I reckon if we'd captured this sentiment after Albanese announced that, they would have said everywhere across the country is a great place to buy.
Yeah, I reckon you would be right. I think that policy is going to be like sitting here with you in 12 months and doing another survey that not only now captures that, but also captures some of the response that's come out of it. I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see, because I don't think I've seen a policy that can drive sentiment FOMO as much as it will, but also some real legitimate movements in the property market if it's taken up as much as I think a lot of us professionals think it might be.
Yeah.
I think the results in 12 months' time will be extremely interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying results for 12 months because you can quantify that off, say, a sentiment report like this. I'm putting it out on the record that I'm like, it's 6 months in my perspective. I'm saying by Easter 2026, everyone will say the market has completely shifted.
Yeah.
And we will never be the same pre-1 October. Because COVID was a lag. It was a lag scenario, right? At the very start of it, people were like, mate, this is not good for property. If we cast your mind back to COVID, it was like, this is going to be a 30% drop, for example. This is not good for the market. So people sat back.
Yeah.
And it was only once it really started to gain momentum, rates started to drop, borrowing capacity shot up. People then realized, hang on, prices aren't bottoming out here. They're actually increasing. Then we saw that kind of kick into gear. Whereas this is a very deliberate national strategy that's going out with people having, not a lot of warning, but enough warning to kind of get their house in order. And mate, we're seeing, I think we were chatting before, our business is at 3x its normal volume. It's bonkers. We actually can't keep up. And that's why I'm like, I'm seeing it from a turnaround time from a bank perspective, because they're being inundated with new applications. We can start to see real-time data around pre-approvals and volume and sentiment, because the next part then is sentiment's picking up. You can see nearly every pocket that clients are going to buy in is an auction market. Auction markets predominantly show that it's a seller's market. And you can start to see, mate, there's that flurry of activity come into October through to the end of the year. It's going to turn the market. If people think the horse is bolted beforehand, just wait and watch. You can't put this back in the cage, mate, afterwards.
Oh, and I think that I agree with 100% of what you said. And I think just driving some really basic common sense and data to support it, or I guess just basic economic principles. Like we are still in a huge supply crunch. The supply crunch hasn't gotten any better. If anything, it's probably arguably gotten worse, because we've still had really strong net migration. We've still got positive movement in population. We haven't seen any real uptick in the development of new properties. Like even the government housing accords is not being stuck to, and we're 12 months into it, if even. So we have that on the supply side, i.e. before this policy was announced, supply was already not in really great shape. And now we've got this new policy where people who couldn't afford can now afford in the eyes of the bank. So that instantly means more demand. Couple that with rate drops that people who were planning 6 months ago, who obviously don't have much experience, haven't even had their borrowing assessed in the last 6 months to see the effect of those cash rate drops. When they go and do it, especially if they're in that first home buyer bucket, their borrowing is going to be significantly more than what they thought it would have been. And then you go and couple that as well with the fact that there might still be a few more rate drops, as well as, for some people, just the overall economy is getting fractionally easier to deal in. Like people aren't as stressed, and we see that through things like the Westpac sentiment survey each month and things like that. So demand on the other side of that seesaw is even higher. So where can it go? Basic economics.
Mate, this is exactly it. It's exactly what anyone trying to overthink or analyze this market to the nth degree. I think the other part that also I see is there might be new buildings, but the quality of those builds are abysmal. And that's me not taking pot shots because I'm not a builder or developer. It's more just to go, I'm seeing it. And the defect reports that come in when clients are trying to get the OCs, for example, the build quality it's shocking. And I have massive concerns that they're really trying to push and rush these builds. You won't see the effects of poor builds until maybe a couple of years later, and maybe the inability to then rectify those, because you might not see the builder might not be around as well. So I worry you might meet supply quotas at some point, but it may have the quantity ticked, but it may not have the quality box ticked.
Absolutely. And if I can add one more thing onto the back of that, the other side of it is that we also still have critical shortages in labor for people that are related to the home building industry. So the government can set whatever standards that they want for it. Like I'm looking at here, there was data from 2023-24 that was about the new permanent residents, and there was around 185,000 of them. And of that 185,000, about 166 were tradespeople.
Wow.
And yet, we can set whatever standards we want. We can have anybody come out and say, we want to do this, we're going to build this, we're going to try this, we can put grants out, we can do everything under the sun. But at the end of the day, if you don't even have people to build it, and all you have to do is go to any work site. And it's interesting because through my TV stuff, I've actually seen that, because obviously we have all sorts of trades on site. And we obviously get people to volunteer to help out with their time as well, because, it's about the community and all the rest. And we've had that many people who have shown up and helped out. And then their comment has been like, we're really sorry, we have to go. We have 3 weeks of work we've got to get done in 1 week because there's no one else to do it. Tilers. You can't get a tiler anywhere. You can't get a tiler from anywhere, right? How are we going to build all these brand new spanking homes of the house and land packages where it's all tiled stuff across everywhere in the house, not just a bathroom?
Yeah.
You can't get a tiler in the country, right? Let alone a good carpenter, let alone a good electrician, a good plumber. So we can set standards where we want, but these issues are being exacerbated by more than just, migrants coming in or population going up or prices going up or whatever it is. At its core, there's still real fundamental issues that aren't being solved yet.
Mate, correct. Mate, I love it. I love every time we catch up. There's obviously plenty going on in your world. I love the perspective that you have, because you obviously get a much higher helicopter view of what's going on from an industry perspective as well, both at a sentiment and like this report does, your BA side as well, but also kind of the unique perspective of being on the ground, literally boots on the ground, doing the Reno work, getting your hands in. I want to see your hands get dirty, mate. Look at you got office hands, I think.
Oh, mate, yeah, it's my old Navy hands have softened up a little bit since, and but you know what? God, there's something good about getting out and just moving things around and picking up some tools and helping out, just really basic things, but like, when you get to see something through to completion and it doesn't take 2 months to get it properly settled or something, you just, you're painting a wall and it's done, and you think, what? That's some good satisfaction right there.
Yeah, I can imagine. Hey, Lachlan, I appreciate it, buddy. Honestly, the detail that goes in here, I always look forward to it. There's some really good reports that we try to, scour. We bring them in, like we've had Craig James, talking about state of the states recently as well. This becomes an annual where we start talking about the PIPA sentiment insight and findings. So I'll include a link to the whole report there. If you want to learn more about PIPA, what they do as an industry body, I'll include links there as well. Lachlan, your team, Atlas Property Group, I'll include links there. It's not that you came on to farm or fish for business, mate. You come on to share here, but I genuinely appreciate your time and your energy. And also we'll include a link to what's the show?
Budget Battlers. Budget Battlers on Channel 9.
There we go. I love it, mate. It's got a good ring to it. Budget Battlers, and people can see you on the big screen as well, mate. But thanks very much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Not at all. Thanks for having me. And to everyone listening, please, when you see these things, the surveys, things like that, please get involved, because it really does matter. And if you're listening in, to Aaron's podcast, you're obviously someone who is involved in property or loves it. And it's those types of perspectives that we take, and we do go and chat with government, chat with industry, and try to make, the industry as a whole better off. And the more people's perspectives we can take, the better results that we can get as well.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll talk to you next time.